What's so important about this place?
This is where the Mandalorian Wars began. She fought here once, and there are things here she must see.
She fought here? Why didn't she say anything?
Do you speak of all your battles? Or are there some you wish to forget?
Before Malachor V and the Mass Shadow Generator, there was the Battle of Dxun. This is where the Mandalorian Wars began, after Mandalore the Ultimate attacked Onderon from their stronghold on Dxun. After decades, the stronghold became heavily fortified. Part of Revan's plan was to send hundreds of small units as feints that would probe for weaknesses in the Mandalorian defense. The Battle of Dxun took months, and these squads, like all the other detachments, suffered heavy casualties. The Exile led one of these groups. She made a decision that contributed to the high casualty count and informed her eventual fate at Malachor V.
Regret.
Like last time, I went through all the dialogue options to figure out which ones grant dark side or light side points, as well as which ones don't. What you're seeing now are the results of this test. There will again be a link to all the images, along with a transcript of the entire dialogue section in the description box below. I also went back and added the dialogue transcript to the description box of the previous video. As you can see from the images, no light side points can be gained here. There also aren't many dark side options to choose from. As you'll see in a moment, it's not the results that matter most, it's the reason behind those options. As you can see from this image, no matter which option you choose, it's neutral. Picking option 4 gives you the general response that you always hear with every option.
We already lost half the men just getting to the path. They've got the rest of the company pinned down by the crash site. You can't possibly ask the troops to go forward. If you ask us to charge, will it make a difference? Will our sacrifice mean something?
Option number 1 will add,
We know, General, but we just don't have enough men to accomplish our objective, no matter how important.
Option number 2 will add,
General, it would be suicide to go forward. There's just too few of us.
and option number 3 will add,
But we won't help by throwing our lives away to storm the path. Too many Mandalorians, too few of us.
This is Dxun, the heart of the Mandalorian crusade.
Dxun was indeed the heart of the Mandalorian campaign. It was their headquarters, and Dxun is an inner rim world. It had to be dealt with before the Republic forces could move on to fight the Mandalorians across the outer rim.
I remember we charged the line. The losses were terrible.
This canonically establishes that the Exile and her troops charged despite the minefield. Perhaps she could have instructed them to retreat, but what kind of consequences would that have had?
We had to charge. Our forces were fully committed. We would either win the battle or lose the war. There was no real choice.
As I mentioned before, the battle took months and the casualties were heavy. Despite winning the battle in the end, the Republic suffered approximately 10 times the amount of casualties compared to the Mandalorians. For the Republic forces to pull out after suffering such large amounts of casualties would have been absolutely unacceptable. They would have been ruined. In such a weakened state, they never would have stood a chance against the Mandalorians with their headquarters intact within the Inner Rim. The Exile applies this overall picture of the battle to her current situation. We, as a small fraction of the entire force, all of the cogs in this war machine, will fully commit or we lose the war. This also applies when discussing the final option.
The battle is an invaluable opportunity. We will fight on.
If you ask us to charge, will it make a difference? Will our sacrifice mean something?
Only Revan could answer that. Even afterwards, no one could piece together exactly what happened. We won though.
Revan was Supreme Commander, in other words, the big picture guy. He ordered hundreds of small units to assault Mandalorian positions, along with war droids to destroy anti-air emplacements. But only Revan could know which one of these small unit feints were the most crucial. Many of them must have been diversions. You trust that the higher-ups know what they're doing, but the Exile and the troops under her direct command are not droids. Revan is the big picture guy, but being the small picture guy doesn't make you some worthless automaton. You're the one who's actually there, adapting to the constantly changing combat parameters.
Taking the path was just one of 100 feints. It was unnecessary for victory.
That may be true, but that's a big picture calculation. There's no way for Mitra to be sure of it. Perhaps the argument should have been that they couldn't complete the mission due to losing too many people. The squad got cut in half making landfall, and then got cut in half again making their way here. Now they face almost certain death by running through a minefield. They might all die without ever completing their mission.
We will press forward if you ask it. The path is mined. If you ask us to charge, there will be losses, General.
Hindsight being 2020, they charged and completed the mission, but still suffering even more losses. Maybe there was another way, but if they didn't finish the mission and they all died, would such a sacrifice be worth it?
War calls for blood. Yours was taken that day. Searching for meaning is pointless.
If the Exile was feeling particularly callous, or if the player was looking for some dark side points, they'd pick the third option. In this day and age, there are many types of warfare. Some that don't involve any bloodshed at all, but regardless of the type or body count, the meaning for it is absolutely essential. Only a warmonger would want meaningless war just for the sake of war. That's why people generally don't like hawkish politicians who advocate for preemptive wars without giving good reason to be the aggressors. It's easy for people to just see numbers on a page and forget that those numbers represent real people who are fighting and dying, and for what? What are you going to tell the family members of the casualties? You can try and tell them that they died a hero, but all they're gonna hear is that their parents, siblings, cousins died in vain. What are you going to tell the people of the country you attacked? You don't like them? You were just following orders? So no, searching for meaning isn't pointless. It is crucial. Throwing people's lives away for no reason is just chaos.
Let me go first this time. I'll try and disable the mines.
As I mentioned before, maybe there was another way. Perhaps not a way for them to retreat and have the uncompleted mission not be a big deal, but perhaps a way for them to move forward without taking too many more casualties. If you had a high enough demolition skill, this option is revealed, giving you the opportunity to disable the minefield first.
Thank you, General. Thank you.
Not this time. I'll go up there alone.
The Exile can say that she will not make the same decision a second time, but if you don't have enough demolition skill, then you'll have to pick this option and you can't disable the mines. Will you run through them and hope you'll survive? If you have the Destroy Droid Force ability, you can neutralize the mines that way, but that's now.
I stand by my decision. At the time, it was the right thing to do.
Through the Exile's recent experiences, she may have gained the knowledge and skill to disable mines and the force ability that can destroy them, or even the strength to run through a minefield and survive. But we can't say that she had any of these abilities back then. If she did, you can imagine that she'd use them instead of subjecting her troops to a live minefield. It would just be wasteful to not use them. Apart from it being something I would consider evil, getting your troops killed would also purposefully lower your chances of completing the mission. You don't receive any dark side points for this option because it's true. At the time, it was the only way. But how about now? You're being placed in the same situation again, and you're stronger now. If all this wasn't a vision, and you are actually placed in this situation again with your newfound powers, then it behooves you to use them. But in this case, perhaps it would be best to accept what you did.
We have orders. We follow them.
It's obvious that Mitra Surik has regrets, and the Battle of Dxun was one of them. Perhaps she regrets not retreating, or she regrets not being strong enough back then to protect her men. And that's what disabling those minds might do, make you hold on to that regret. Regret by itself can lead you down a darker path and consume you. In such an instance, being at peace with your decisions, even if they were wrong, is preferable.
I only ask that you make the choice without regret.
The only casualties that mattered in that war were Jedi. Now charge!
Does that line sound familiar to you? Because it reminds me of one person in particular.
So you murdered your own, like a true Sith.
They were not Jedi, it was not murder.
Obviously, you receive dark side points for saying this, and it's one of the worst things I've heard Atris say. You're saying that if someone doesn't belong to your tribe, then their lives are worthless. I encountered a question once that asked something along the lines of, what matters more, the life of one of your countrymen or the lives of 1,000 foreigners? That's 1,001 human beings, who are all strangers to me. It's kind of a trick question. All of their lives have the same amount of worth to me. Even if the question is whether I would sacrifice the life of one countryman to save 1,000 foreigners, it's the trolley dilemma all over again. I may have mentioned this in a video before, but I have no idea what patriotism feels like, and it has to do with my psychology. I'm the one who's abnormal. Tribalism is one of the most human things a person can adhere to. It's not impossible for me, but such a scale seems absurd to me. At the end of the day, we're all just human beings. Which named piece of dirt my mother was located in when she gave birth to me, or my genetic background. I can't have pride in something I had no control of. But my written articles, this video, my YouTube channel, I can have some pride in that. I made that. But Atris takes this even further. She considers herself the judge and jury of who is Jedi and who isn't. And that, coupled with the idea that anyone who isn't Jedi is insignificant, and you have a tyrant. Did you know that after telling the troops that you'll clear the path, you can still change your mind or lie to them that it's clear?
General, is the way clear?
Conceivably, you can only clear some of the minds and then lie to them that it's completely clear. But what will be the point of that? Regardless, you don't receive any dark side points for doing it. The reason for that somewhat eludes me. But I figured the reason is related to my previous explanation. At the time, it was the only way and it had to happen. If the exile felt like they wouldn't have charged otherwise, then lying may have been the only way, at least after promising to clear the mines first. Another piece of trivia comes from the fact that, like before, if you are defeated in the subsequent fight, you are again dosed with dark side points. But not if you're already on the dark side. If you're already dark side here and you fail, you're killed. This is something I found unique to only 2 sections of the tune, here and in the last one, but only when you're defeated by the dark side version of yourself, and not by Revan. I'm not sure why this is so, why these sections in particular. But it occurs to me that it was probably the events of Dxun that made Revan put Mitra in charge of the mass shadow generator. Whether the assault she led on Dxun was important or not, she lost 3/4 of her men and still pressed on, making them run through a minefield, killing almost all of them. Revan needed someone who was willing to pull that trigger when the time came. Mitra Surik had proven herself a prime candidate. She wasn't going to back out at the last minute, ignore it all and pretend like it'll all work out, or just not care. If she didn't care, then she wouldn't have joined the war to begin with. Her experiences throughout it only strengthened her resolve. It did not make her descend into apathy. We can't have that. Because as we all know,
Apathy is